Welcome friends to another r/prorevenge video. Did you know that the professional thing to do is to hit the like and subscribe buttons down below? That said, our first story of the day is by Sorry. Didn't like my style. Me and my wife found this gorgeous home, not yet on the market. Realtor had told us we owned all this nice forested land surrounding it. We were sold. Once we were dealing with the logistics of buying, we found out we didn't actually own all this land and that someone would be building a huge house right next to us. For context, our driveway runs up the side of our house and the side is really like the front. We decide, whatever, can't be that bad. So the guy takes 2 years to build the massive house that dwarfs ours and kills our view. But whatever, we play nice the whole time, letting him use our power and water. We have to get along after all. I bite my tongue over all the inconveniences and him screwing me over and living through construction. Kept things on really good terms. When we were talking, this guy would tell me stories of times he had to move because of fights with neighbors. Trying to look tough, I guess. I didn't think much of it. It all started one day in the winter. The way my driveway is and how close his house is, he told me I could blow the snow on the small section on his side in between. I was very mindful not to hit the house with the snow and everything. One day out of nowhere, he shows up at my door telling me to keep my snow on my own side. Okay, whatever, fine, be a jerkhat, I'm not going to get into it with you. From there, it's him telling me he owns half my driveway because it's on his property, and he's going to rip it up and put a fence and all this other stuff. So I try and work with him. He ended up not doing anything, but held that over our heads to get his way on everything. Makes me move my shed, and it's like a mini house. Makes me install 180 feet of French drain over a bit of water runoff from my driveway. Meanwhile, he's putting hundreds of gallons of water on my property from his 2 downspouts on my side, and doesn't do anything. One day, he decides to put up cameras and points them at our house from multiple angles. This bothers us, but we don't show it. Until a couple months later, he's out there moving them and adjusting angles to get better views of our main hangout areas in my yard driveway where me and my friends and family hang out. So my wife asks him if he can just not point them directly at us. He brushes her off, so I go and have a word with him. This turned into a huge yelling match about all the crap. At this point, it's clear that we both hate each other. The only reason I can figure is that they're super religious, like have 8 kids and just super religious. I'm covered in tattoos, piercings, ride motorcycles, and listen to all sorts of metal music. Though I'm no idiot, I'm respectful and keep my noise to a minimum, so I'm assuming he just didn't like my style. Anyway, after the camera fight, I decided I would start blasting my music in my garage with my garage doors open day in and day out anytime I got the chance. And I played some of the most morbid death metal and other offensive stuff to mess with him. Cannibal Corpse, Cattle Decapitation, Infant Annihilator, Limp Bizkit, Acacia Strain, Lorna Shore, anything demonic or that had a lot of swearing. On top of that, I got a drone and started flying around his house. Started doing hooligan stuff on my bike in the driveway, just being noisy. After a couple of months, near Christmas, we see a for sale sign go up. Couple more months down the road, and it's my birthday. They're loading trucks and leaving. Best birthday present I could ask for. Though it pissed me off that he brought a Christmas gift basket and my wife accepted it, I took this as my pro-revenge win. The gift basket thing just shows how crazy he was. He would do stuff like that. Gift baskets, waving at us, saying hi, then turn around and do something to start a problem. I'll never understand it, but I'm glad it's over. The new neighbors are quiet and never home. Workaholic 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Life is good. Be honest, if you hated your neighbor, would you try to be as annoying as possible to try and drive them out of there? Or would you do like a no contact thing and just try to avoid them? Let me know in the comments down below. This next story is by an anonymous poster. My wife cheated and lost. Gonna preface this by stating that this happened 3 years ago. Let's start with the frame of the story. I, 27-year-old male, grew up like most guys under the assumption that the one is out there. That if you play your cards right, your soulmate will magically appear and you'll ride off in the sunset. When I was 19, I met a woman. Let's call her Bree. I met Bree through mutual friends while I was in the army. Bree was cute, quirky, seemed like an overall good girl. Her friend, let's call her Sam, thought it would be a great idea to get us together as a couple. Not sure what her reasons were, but I was into her and she was into me. Bree was up for a few days visiting Sam, and I had just gotten back from my leave in my home state, so the meetup was inevitable. We all had lunch. Myself, Bree, Sam, and Sam's husband, let's call him Jim. The meetup was nothing spectacular, but after Bree had flown home, she messaged me on Facebook, and we hit it off. After roughly 3 weeks of talking to Bree, she hit me with a very strange question. If I was pregnant, what would you do? Now, before I get to my answer, let's do the math here. She was in her party years and slept around frequently. I found that out way later in the relationship. She had a boyfriend a month before meeting me. I was adopted, so accepting a kid as my own seemed like a no-brainer. My answer was what seemed like the right thing. I will love that child as if it were my own. Well, turns out she was showing a lot of signs of pregnancy. A week later, she took the test and it was positive. I stood by my word. I'll take care of this kid. There was a 3-month gap between this revelation and when she decided to fly out to me. During this gap, she was very flaky, trying to see if she could get who she thought was the dad to commit and help her take care of the kid. He never budged. She chose me instead. Yes, I understand now why staying with her was a bad idea. I was dumb, in love, and I believed she was the one, and that she'd come around eventually. I married her so that the army would cover the birth, and the rest should have been history. But we all know it wasn't. Year 2. 2 years in, I noticed something was a bit strange. Some guy, we'll call him Ron, was liking every post she put out and commenting on every photo that had the daughter in it. This seems odd. At this point in our marriage, I had gotten out of the military and was working a job in security. One night while working, my lizard brain connected the dots and the gut feeling followed. Now, I'm not one to act on just suspicion. I need proof. Given that I was working a nightclub that night, I would get off at 4 in the morning, she'll be asleep. She leaves her laptop on the living room couch downstairs every night before bed. The plan's coming together. I get home, head to the couch, the laptop's there. I open it and take 2 guesses at the password. It's the birth year of our daughter. I go to her Facebook, I look in messages, there it is. 6 months of conversation with a guy named Ron. Some of the conversation is flirty, some is banter about how useless and how less of a man I am. The worst part though was the revelation that this guy is who she feels is the biological father, and she's trying to get him involved. I scroll and scroll until I can't stomach it anymore. I grab the laptop, take it upstairs, and set it on her with the screen shining in her face. As she slowly wakes up, I say, "We're talking about this in the morning," and walked back downstairs. She normally wakes up at 7 but didn't come down until 9, probably hoping I would be asleep on the couch. She begins by saying it was only friendly talk and not technically cheating. I called BS and told her that if I see this again, I'm gone. Now, I said if, but I knew better. It would be when. This is when I set my plan in motion. I dropped out of college to get a job in my field and made sure anything that was opened up on her credit was under her name. I began stating that back where I'm from has a better economy and that we'd be better off there. It took 2 years of convincing, but it worked. Nothing was under my name, and we were set to go to my hometown in 6 months. We got there in May, and I sent her home to visit the next month. I knew what she would do and who she would do it with. There was a guy we met through Sam the day before we left, and I knew immediately that she was interested in him. 3 weeks after going to visit, she starts acting strange again, prioritizing other things over me, putting things off, and becoming distant. Now, I spent 2 years setting the dominoes up. I just let her knock them over. I made sure I was jobless, had nothing to my name, and was home where I could fall back on family. I pressured her into admitting that she cheated, and the dominoes tumbled. I cut all the funds that were being sent to the account, drained the account to file for divorce. I had nothing, so she couldn't take half. I had no job, so what lifestyle did we have that would require giving her alimony? Everything was in her name, so even though I had financial responsibility over some of those bills, the divorce lasted long enough to destroy her credit. I gave her everything and sacrificed much to raise her child, but in the end, she lost the most. I'm now extremely successful and valued in my career. I'm not interested in marriage, but I have no shortage of women in my life. Life's good. I still have contact with the daughter, and Bree often flirts with me trying to get me back. I'm the only dad the kid has known and have no intentions of becoming an ex-dad. Even though getting back with her is emotionally tempting to be with the kid more, I know better, and I have better options. It's definitely a great thing that OP is sticking around for the daughter. Having that stable father figure despite all the other probable dysfunction going on is probably invaluable for the daughter. That said, having read this story and going on that trip with OP in it, young and dumb is kind of understated. There were mountainous red flags, but sometimes your desire for things to not be that and just work out can kind of just convince you that maybe they are that way, maybe you're just overthinking. Sometimes it's hard to figure out the truth, even when to everybody else it's so obvious. This next story is by Occasional Mermaid. Keep reporting us cause you set your tent up too close and you're gonna have a bad night. Every summer from May until the end of September, my family, hubby, kid, and me, and 2 other families, one with 2 kids and one with no kids, go camping about every other weekend or so. We always have a great time together. We camp close to the river so the kids can swim and the guys can fish. There's small rapids close by that we walk down to and float back to camp during the day. At night, we build a bonfire and the adults sit around talking and having a few drinks, while the kids pile up in a tent to hang out or go exploring close by with flashlights to see what's out at night. We always put our tents close together, but as far away from the edges of the site as possible so we can have some privacy and don't disturb other campers. The campground rules state that the quiet time runs from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. We've been going on these trips for several years and never had any problems or issues with other campers or campground staff. Over this past summer, we were camping and someone pulled into the campsite next to ours pretty late, maybe 7 or 8 p.m., but set their tent up on part of our site and immediately went into their tent. They had a kayak on their vehicle, and we assumed they were going to have an early morning, so we didn't say anything about it to them since it was late, dark, and we didn't think it was a big deal. Fast forward to 10:05, and someone from the front desk comes to our site and tells us they had a noise complaint about our site. The guy said the staff making rounds didn't hear us or feel we were being loud, but since they had someone call up there, they had to come talk to us. We apologized for any issues we may have caused and agreed to be quieter in case we were disturbing anyone. Maybe half an hour later, the guy comes back and says they had another call and asks us if we've heard any other people because he couldn't hear us until he got past our tents and thought maybe the complainer was accusing the wrong site. We kind of look around cause we haven't heard anyone else. There's a few other sites with people sitting around fires, but we hadn't heard anyone. However, as we're glancing around, I noticed that our site neighbor is peeking out their tent at us, talking to the groundskeeper. When he saw me looking, he quickly ducked back into his tent. His tent is on our site and basically dry humping our tents, which is probably why he could hear us so easily. After the groundskeeper left, I decided to look up the campground rules. Nothing about lights out, just quiet time. So I took one of our bright shop lights and moved it as close as possible to their tent, turned it on, and left it shining like a spotlight on their tent all night long. The next morning, when we all got up, they were gone. We were there for 5 more days with absolutely no issues. I wonder at all if they took away that if anybody in the future does encroach on their site, that it's more worthwhile to go out and confront them rather than expose yourself to having an issue like that. In fact, I think the most satisfying revenge against this guy would be realizing that they're on your campsite, calling it out, and making them have to pick up their tent, unpack everything, which, let's be real, if you're camping, that's the worst part of the entire trip, and basically pack up and get out of there. Don't be a nuisance when it's a couple families just quietly in their tent. Even if it's quiet time, it's like you can't talk in your tent. I think in general the other person just had too many issues. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So of all these stories I've read today, which is your favorite and why? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you haven't yet, if you could like and subscribe, that would mean a lot to me. Whatever you do, whether it's liking, subscribing, turning notifications on, all of it helps grow this channel and I appreciate the heck out of it. So until next time, I'll see you all tomorrow with some more stories.